Conversations with leading experts in enterprise resource planning. Evolving ERP. Powered by Insight Jam.
Hello and welcome to Evolving ERP, Insight Jam's spot for all things enterprise resource planning, or whatever we might call it in the future. As I'm learning, that might be a thing. I'm your host and producer, Ryan Daly, back again, and I'd be a terrible podcast host if I didn't take this time right now to invite you to like and subscribe the show right down there. Go ahead and do it to get updated on all of our Evolving ERP shows and everything else that Insight Jam has to offer. Please go do that right now. And now that you've done that, I'd like to introduce our guest for this week. Returning to the show, returning champion, Dan Aldridge. Welcome back. Great to have you. And for the first time, we have Anders Green. Welcome to the show, Anders.
Hello, everyone.
Why don't we get things started? If folks are very interested in Dan's background, this is your first time in the show, I invite you to go back into the episodes 1 and 2. Dan talks extensively about his background in ERP. It spans decades and is very varied and interesting, so please do check that out. But Anders, since it's your first time on the show, why don't you fill us in? Give us a little background for folks who haven't heard about
Mystery
you.
Background.
Yes.
Nobody knows where he came from.
Hailing from parts unknown. It's Anders Green.
Yes.
No, please demystify it for us.
Sure. Well, way back, electrical engineering degree. So that's where I came from. And, originally when I started out, I was working for companies like IBM and Ericsson and doing database stuff for those guys, cellular phones. I ended up moving on to Atmel, where we were doing the custom silicon for digital camera and image processing. So I spent a lot of time when I was a younger man writing algorithms to do that kind of color grading, automatic exposure, a lot of intelligence in those cameras at the silicon level, providing all the drivers and low-level code for that stuff. After, 15 years, I got tired of those trips to, overseas all the time to do camera support. And I said, I'm getting out of this. I'm getting out. I want something much more concrete than banging away on a keyboard all day. And so I made the jump from there to in distribution, and specifically contractor construction supply. So selling compressors and nail guns and nails and collated nails and screws and fasteners. A very hands-on kind of, you get to see what you do at the end of the day operation. So that was we started. That was early 2000s, and we were on QuickBooks, which, in my opinion, is not a great solution for a distribution company. I'm sure others have other opinions about it.
Not really an ERP.
Exactly.
Dan has talked about this, yes.
I feel like QuickBooks is great if you are selling knit caps on Etsy. It's a great solution for that. And in my experience, everything has been scale. And at every different level, there are better solutions that meet what you need. So we moved on to a Epicor product, it was Activant at the time, and used that for a dozen years. But then about 5 years ago, 2019-ish, I was like, this is getting really old in the tooth. We want to do something new. This feels like it was architected in the 90s, which is, kind of accurate. Many solutions were. That's not a surprise. So I was looking all throughout the market for newer solutions that would meet, what we would consider kind of regular for a modern application. It's on the cloud. You can get to it from anywhere. It supports the mobile, multi-user, all the regular stuff that you would expect. And the marketplace was pretty short on that at the lower scale of, independent distributors. And so I said, well, Anders, you wrote software for decades. This is a thing you can do. It's horribly inefficient if you decided to do this. Writing your own software is, but then something interesting happened. You may remember in December of 2019, the whole world turned off. And so it turned out not a bad time to decide we're just going to hole up for a year and write code. Business is slow. People aren't building and moving and no one's going outside. So this was very much, this project, ALOX, got started about 12 days before the World Health Organization announced that, we found out about this on the 19th. So it was like December 16th of 2019 was when I said, I think I should really do this. And then the whole world changed. And so it's very much a COVID hibernation project that brought this in. And a lot of the technologies that we're using with ALOX, it's stuff that wasn't available 20 years ago. So, there's a lot of great software out there that is, that is available now that people would have built differently if the infrastructure was different when they started, right? That doesn't make me smarter than all those people. It just says I had the benefit of starting at a time when these things were possible. There's way more connectivity, there's way more cloud, there's way more everything else that we are used to now. And that's a lot of what went into ALOX. Would have been very difficult to do all that time ago. So that was the story, is disappointed with what was available, had a perfect opportunity to say, let's build some stuff and get a window to ramp it up. And then here we are, where we're now doing, distribution, for smaller operations. If you are a big manufacturing place, Dan, I know you do all kinds of stuff with Infor.
Yeah.
And, we know there's a lot of huge manufacturing sites that are like, 100 million, 200 million, and it's big operations. That's awesome. You should definitely talk to Dan, because I will happily pass you off and say, you need some different software than what we do. We like to stay pretty focused on being a good solution for distribution. And I think that in general, that's what you come to folks like Dan for, is to say, hey, here's what we actually do in our business. What should I look at? And what should I ignore because it's not a good match, right? That's half of it, because nearly every piece of software out there can show you a cool, some cool graphs and a nice dashboard, and you're like, that looks cool, and I can have it on my phone. They all do that, but which one really fits? That's why you need people like Dan to help you get through that journey. So that's where I came from.
Oh, that's fascinating. I guess some people took up sourdough bread. You decided to go into build your own ERP suite. That's awesome.
True. Yeah. I admit I just buy my sourdough bread. I like it, but I just buy it.
Don't create your own.
That's the best bread for you. All right. Well, I'll step out of the way. Dan and Anders, take that ERP conversation away and have fun.
Yeah, Anders. So I took away a couple of things like that from your explanation of how you came up. And it is interesting the timing that you come in and right at COVID, and you said, I'm going to build what Infor would call a micro vertical solution, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Instead of a one size fits all. And I don't do too much with the distribution side, like you said, but in the manufacturing space, most of the ERP solutions out there are one size fits all kind of solutions, right? And I think Infor, what I like about Infor's strategy for differentiation is the same as yours, in the sense that, we do automotive, we do aerospace and defense, they're all specific products for those industries. And yep. I'm just cruising your website and looking at your LinkedIn profile and everything like that in preparation. I noticed that you say, hey, we're not the solution for this. We're not the solution for big manufacturing. That's Dan's solution. We are the solution for kind of a niche in size of revenue, and then particularly in fasteners. And you'll go to a conference in fasteners. I see you I see you in the,
Oh yeah.
taking selfies at the conferences and things like that, because you have a very specific cloud-based, run anywhere with all the metrics, all of this sort of thing like that for distribution. And you have point of sale. So what you have is a very nice solution. It looks to be a very nice solution for the niche market that you're in. And I would say that what Infor has done has said, let's focus on even micro verticals, right? They call them micro
Right.
verticals. So even within automotive tier 2 parts and components, right? That they'll build for you or that they have a solution. And the big advantage of that is, unlike something you mentioned, QuickBooks, any generic ERP system, unlike that, industry specific or even micro vertical specific functionality like you have in your product is amazing, because what it allows you to do is to basically have something that works more or less out of the box for a particular industry without doing a lot of customization, right?
Right. You don't want to start out with, hi, welcome to our product. We need to charge you $150,000 to do these customizations that really everyone in your industry needs.
Right.
It's like, it's not a surprise that, oh, you're an automotive supplier, that we need to look up parts by year, make, and model. You're expected to come in with that. We don't want to build that from scratch every time. It would be awful service to the customers to say, the ramp up time would be too long. All around, it's much better to take the route Infor has, where you've got, some strategies. Obviously, if we're doing, supermarkets have their own set of things that they need. Aging on milk,
Shelf life.
Right.
Like that, right?
You aren't going to have in other areas. And, pharmaceuticals, it's going to have the same kind of thing, but then it's going to be connected to a bunch of licensing and compliance that supermarkets aren't going to have. And so, yeah, I'm very much a fan of the idea that you would want a pre-configured or pre-architected setup, that you're not starting from scratch every time. You got to take that industry experience and build it into what you're delivering to an ERP customer.
Yeah, the industry's specific experience is really key also. For example, we as PCG, my company, we have a smart factory solution. That's Industry 4.0. That type of solution. It's our own IP. We have our own website for it and everything. So it builds upon a couple different ERP solutions we offer Infor, we offer NetSuite, but it builds on top of that. And it's our own IP that's devoted to smart factory and, connecting IoT devices and all kinds of things like that. So that industry specific experience in manufacturing, even specific types of manufacturing, is really key. And that's one of the main things that we sell.
Are you able to get into like some of the digital twin stuff with that smart factory?
Yes,
That's
we can.
Super cool.
Yes, we can.
What's the latest in that area?
In digital twins, I'm not really an expert. I won't say I'm an expert on digital twins, but I think the ability to kind of do rapid prototyping and things like that is in there. That's kind of the latest stuff. And and we'll talk about this in a second. I figure there's some AI involved in doing the rapid prototyping for a digital twin. I imagine there's.
Or is there?
Is there? We're going to speculate on whether it's there or not.
Yes.
But yeah, there's some really fascinating things going on in there for manufacturing. And I think kind of the AI hype has really left manufacturing out, and to a large extent, distribution, I think, out of the mix. And it's focused more on finance and invoices and matching and proving of invoices, things like that. That what Vinny Merchandani, who was our guest a couple of weeks ago, he said, it's white collar. It's all white collar. Where's the blue collar stuff, right?
Yeah, I don't see a lot of announcements that says AI is going to drive your forklift.
Right.
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 You
don't want AI driving your forklift, by the way. That's a bad idea.
like AI is going to run your milling machine. AI is going to set up your lathe. I haven't seen any announcements like that yet. And, I think that speaks to the idea that, so I use AI. I think almost all of us are at this point.
Yep.
I'm a black collar guy today, but sure, it's white collar work, and it's in my mind. There's plenty that it's good for, but I still think there's a bit of oversell happening within the AI space. That it is not. We're being promised a lot. But if you think back, you'll probably remember, wait a minute, weren't we promised a lot with blockchain? Weren't we promised a lot with like headless composition? Weren't we promised a lot with, the cloud? Now the cloud has delivered a lot. But the point is, we've had a lot of promises that have turned out to have the volume way down when you look at. Yes. Yeah. So I think that AI, it's getting some good work done. Like you said, especially like invoice matching. Like I want to receive an email and have it automatically find what the due dates are and match up all the lines and put that into my ERP system. That is available right now. You can buy that. You can integrate that. That is a product that is doing work. And I'm saying, show me number 2. Show me the second AI product that you can put into ERP or MRP. Show me number 2. I'm still waiting for number 2.
Still waiting, but you did mention when we talked before. You mentioned some possibilities for, say, pricing optimization or maybe product mix or something like that. And I was thinking more in terms of on the shop floor, optimizing how products move down different lines as alternative routings and things like that it can have potential there, but I don't think it's been delivered.
I think you could see those things, Dan, for the listeners, the viewers. For me, AI is really split into 2 halves. One half is the generative AI side, and that's the making text, reading text, or making images. That's generative AI. And that is absolutely the flashier side of artificial intelligence because you get a cool picture when you're done.
Yeah.
And then the other side of AI is the neural networks and the part where you're actually training it to do a task. And that kind of thing is, it's much more like if I was going to train a machinist to run a particular job on a certain machine, you are focused on that exact machine. And this product, you're like, we are doing titanium. That means the spindle speed needs to be this rate. The cutter that you need to use is one of these sizes. And these are the heat parameters that you cannot exceed. It's particular, right? So when we're talking about AI that's doing neural networks, we are training it to do something particular. So this is not a plugin at all. So among the kind of things that people have talked about with, AI is going to do whatever, one of them has been optimize all my prices. So if you look at this and you're like, okay, I've got 80,000 SKUs that we move from, 200 distributors. And I want AI to go in, optimize all those prices so that I'm getting the maximum revenue from each customer. Here is what you don't think of. It sounds pretty sweet because you're like, yes, a human is not going to go through 80,000 SKUs for 400 customers and cross-match everything and come up with perfect pricing.
Right.
That would be difficult. But you're like, AI can do it. So if you're going to do that with AI, well, you're going to need to train them on this process. So you need to give them the information of like, what do customers buy? How often do they buy? What is the price elasticity? And then you want to get the price as high as you can without losing the customer. So what you're actually training them on is how many customers you lose. You need some data where the price goes too high and you lose the customer, and the AI says, aha, right, that's when that happens, that's because of these 18 factors. So the only way that this is going to work is if you lose a certain number of your customers to generate the data to train the AI to get the better prices.
Wow. Yeah.
Most folks.
Yeah, they don't. Well, they don't want to take a risk, right? This is kind of an example. I like that example actually because it's an example of the risks of it.
Yes.
If you have, well, there's more risks, and other risks might be bad data, which we never see.
Sure.
Right? Never see bad data. So that's not a big
not
risk.
once.
So if you're using that sort of data that creates hallucinations,
Right.
And that sort of thing coming out of as a result of bad data, then you're really training not only you're training it wrong, you're taking a risk that it's going to make a bad decision, right? And if you try to work because there's so many data points, and you mentioned 80,000 SKUs, if you get out of the way and say, hey, AI, go figure this out, then you're essentially allowing the AI to make its own decision without human intervention. That's the thing that scares me the most. It's not even the displacing jobs. I mean, I know a lot of people are worried about that. But that's more white collar. I think it's more white collar, ironically, than it is blue collar, because I think blue collar, if their AI is not doing much work on the shop floor and trying to optimize the shop or anything like that, because it's most automated anyway. It's not really displacing any jobs there. It might displace an accounts payable clerk, for example, right?
Possibly.
Probably not. So I think that's the bigger worry is it learning on and making decisions based on bad data.
Yeah, I agree that the possibility of losing jobs for blue collar guys, I think is pretty low. With white collar and AI, my off the cuff guess would actually be that remote, offshoring just through cloud is probably a bigger current threat to desk work. I think that the idea that, if you're just processing invoices that come in by email, that's your whole job, there's no reason you have to do that in Dearborn, Michigan. You could have someone in the Philippines do that has just as good English, just as good capabilities. Instead of saying, I'm going to spend $200,000 trying to build an AI that'll do that, I think there are cheaper options with humans.
Yeah.
At this point. Let alone, I'm going to build my own AI data center, because now you're talking, tens of millions of dollars for that level of, computational power. There's still some really difficult problems to solve. Here's another one. Let's say that you we want to use AI. We like that tool where it does automatic invoices, and I'm like, cool. So you're a big manufacturer. You're like, yeah, we're a really big manufacturer. We supply, all these, aviation, and you're like, aviation. And military. Anyone? Yeah, military. You're like, okay, so you're telling me you're going to send all of your invoices through this third-party system with data centers you don't know where, and have them automatically churn through that in all of these other locations, and the military's going to be fine with that?
Yeah.
Maybe you need to think all the rest of that through, because I think there might be a little snag. Whereas you can still have, for a reasonable price, a human doing that work inside your, EMP lockdown facility, wherever, if you're in Iron Mountain or something. So there's still a lot of areas where just the idea that we're going to have a computer do it, it doesn't quite match up yet.
Want more Insight Jam? Follow us on Instagram for exclusive content like a daily dose of best practices and buying advice from industry experts and leading solution providers. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel for long-form highlights from our expert panel discussions. And if you prefer to listen, please rate and review the Insight Jam podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Google. The Solutions Review team is hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so don't miss out. Now, let's get back to the show.
What you just said is not just an AI issue. That's also a vertical industry, just to bring that back in. If you talk about aerospace and defense, for example, and you mentioned that manufacturing parts for an aviation supplier or something like that, right? In the US, you have CMMC 2.0 and you have ITAR regulations, right? And then the response would be, in the case of Infor, let's say, would be to create a GovCloud. So GovCloud is compliant with those regulations and ensures, but ITAR is something separately. That's, you have to have people in the US that are US citizens working on your data. You can't do that. You can't ship it off.
Right.
You can't, I imagine you can't have AI, but that's a whole separate topic. And I imagine you can't have AI working on that database either that has the potential to spread something outside. So it has to be kept within the four walls because of regulations. So, but that's a vertical industry issue. That's a perfect vertical industry issue, which is why ERP for vertical industries is so important, I think. It's because all that stuff is built in. You don't have to have SI, you don't have to have Deloitte or Accenture, PwC come in and build all that stuff from scratch and make your core dirty. They call it about clean core, right? If you're going to go from an on-premise system like a ECC or a Bond or something like that to cloud platform, you want to clean up that core so that you can get rid of all the customizations that you did over the last 15, 20 years. Right, which is quite a It's quite a thing unto itself. But you also have to look at business process. You have to look at what the coverage is for the new latest version of the software, and what is industry specific in the solution you're looking for, as opposed to a one size fits all.
That's kind of an interesting process that you bring up, but I'm not even sure if there's an industry standard term for it. But I'm going to throw one out. De-engineering, if you have to look at where you are and say, here's all of the stuff we built over the last 18 years.
Yeah.
How much of it do we just not even use?
Yeah.
And what is involved in cutting that out to get to where we can streamline our data so that we can move it to the current version of whatever our next plan is, right?
Data and processes, processes, maybe even more than data, is cut these out. I mean, like Elon Musk, he said, he tried early on in his career to automate, you can say what you want about Elon Musk. He's a brilliant guy. But he said early on in his career, he started automating processing in Tesla and SpaceX or whatever. And he discovered that automation should be about step 5 in the process, and the first step should be eliminate all the processes you don't need, right, to start with, because right, you don't want to automate something you don't need, because then you're just doing bad things faster, right? Exactly.
Yeah, you don't need that. I saw just recently an article where a former Twitter engineer said we were, this is after the transition to Musk being in charge. He said, we went into this data center sort of in the back. We found this server with 700 of the top of the line NVIDIA AI core cards sitting in it. And the computer was idle. Like they had bought this massively expensive thing and were not using it at all. And it was just literally just using some power and gathering dust. And you're like, what did they spend? $250,000 worth of hardware just sitting there. And so it could have been doing something awful really fast, but instead it was doing nothing at no speed at all. So
something evil really fast.
Oh, yes, yeah, good or evil, but I think that speaks to the concept that you are going to have things in your company, in your ecosystem, in your tech stack that you just don't use anymore. I mean, maybe there was a good idea for that at one particular time.
Yep.
Clearly, it didn't survive whatever rounds of implementation and usefulness. And I don't know if they threw it away or what they did with it, but just an example of what do you have in your tech stack that is maybe you had some customization that was built and it was particular for like one project. Maybe you had some government contractor that needed this particular kind of reporting. And so you had that built. But then it turned out that the industry shifted and maybe you didn't source parts from that part of the world or whatever it was. But now you had this module, you paid 30 grand to have it made and it's sitting there and no one's used it in 12 years.
Yep.
Do you cut it out? Do you keep it? Do you even worry about it? Or do you just junk it and move on? So, and how can you cut it out so that when you do your data transformation to the next step, that it flows smoothly? Complicated.
Yeah, I think that I've just written an article called "How to Upgrade Your Old ERP System to the Cloud Without Dying." And
I die a little death inside.
Which, yeah, exactly. You're expecting to die. But it really talks about identifying. I mean, there's a bunch of old ERP systems out there. I mean, any company of any size, say 100 million on up, they're going to have not just one, they're going to have many old ERP systems, many on-prem.
Yeah.
Lucky if any of them are on the cloud yet. But the process of going to the cloud, rather than just simply migrating in kind of a brownfield or a lift and shift or whatever is different names for it. But I think that you can't do that these days. Or if you're doing that, then you're missing the boat, because the opportunity is to do something in between. Like there's a greenfield, which is start all over again. You obviously don't want to do that.
Sure.
Way too expensive. But there's the brownfield, which is just, let's move our old crap up here to the cloud. So, but we still got our old crap in terms of data, in terms of processes and all of those things. And then you've got something in the middle, which is called Bluefield, or I hear it called Bluefield, which is kind of a mixture. And I think that's the way to go, because what you do is you want to take the opportunity to do a business transformation where you're using your ERP upgrade as part of it, right, as a mechanism. And then you want to do all of this transformation on other things like a smart factory, like installing an MES system, like putting in numerically controlled machines, like, various other things that you can do where the ERP software is maybe 20, 25% of what you're doing, but you're doing a business transformation. And I say business transformation because that's what it is more than a digital transformation. I see digital transformation as kind of a subset of business transformation would be doing a business transformation with digital tools. Let's say that's her term.
Would you maybe say that a digital transformation is more technology centric and a business transformation more people centric?
Yes, and I would say that's the problem with digital transformation, is that it is more technology centered and not really taking into account the organizational change management and all the people aspects, the process aspects of things, and not doing a very good job of that kind of thing in the transition. Just, hey, we got a deadline at the end of 2027, so we better move or we're going to lose our support.
Yeah. When people hear digital transformation, it's easy to think, oh, well, we're just going to get some new hardware and that's going to be amazing. But this is, I think, one lesson that cell phones should have taught us, that if you get the latest iPhone or the latest Pixel phone, what's going to happen? You're going to open it up, charge the battery, and then sync everything. And when you're done, it's going to look exactly the same. You're like, okay, maybe it goes a little faster, maybe it's a little bigger, and maybe the battery lasts a little longer, but all the apps that you're using are the same. And so you did a digital transformation from one complete hardware to a new hardware. And did it change your productivity? Zero. You're doing the same thing. There was no business transformation when you got that new iPhone. It was just, the back isn't scratched anymore, and now you feel like you shouldn't drop it and maybe be but you want to change your business, you're going to change more than just the device. So I think like the lift and shift idea, you're like, well, let's take this server that we have sitting in the closet, virtualize it and put it on the cloud. You're like, well, okay, we probably are not going to have a janitor accidentally unplug it while he's cleaning. So that is a bonus, right? It's sitting in, EC2 or somewhere. Yeah, AWS, it's sitting up there somewhere. No one's going to accidentally, spill coffee on it. So there was an improvement, but it is still literally the same computer doing the same thing with a new IP address. Did that change your business? No, it didn't. I do think there might be some utility there, which is if we have, 40 servers doing who knows what. Well, when our IT team starts moving those to the cloud, one benefit is they will actually look at it and try to figure out what it's doing. And, and maybe when they move it, when the one day that it is turned off here and not yet turned on, if nothing breaks, then they're like, well, maybe we don't need that machine. So, maybe part of that lift and shift is forcing people to just do an inventory of what they actually are using.
By doing that, you're almost going into Bluefield, aren't you? Because you're sort of picking and choosing which things you want. I have a good example of that. I worked with a company that was going to a shared services model. So they were transitioning out of their old software, and a lot of the financials. So they had a list of several thousand customizations of the old system, right? It was an old Bond 5 system. And I'm
glad it was you.
Yeah. I know, right? So I said, let's take a look, let's dig a little bit on this list, because what we want to do is rationalize these customizations, right? We want to leave them behind if we can. Come to find out that they were, about half or more were reports. That they used the programming language called tools to program all of these reports. And there would be 6 or 7 of them. They were just different sorts of the same information. And there would be other ones where they were trying to put it out to a spreadsheet. So all they were really trying to do, they wrote a flat report that would just come out with a delimiter into into a spreadsheet, right? So that's all they were trying to do with this stuff. And I said, well, look, now there's a general ledger table that has all the financial transactions in it with all the information that you need. All you have to do is hit export, and then it goes into a spreadsheet. So I just eliminated over 50% of their customizations in one stroke. And they couldn't even tell me, they had a hard enough time even giving me the list to begin with, right? Because they were like, well, we source, we got some over here, we got some over there, and some are in folders, and this and that. But once they gave me the list, the comprehensive list, I was able to kind of quickly identify which ones could go very easily, and that's essentially all reports, right? Because you can just put an analytics package on there and do it off the data warehouse, and then that takes care of all of that stuff plus a lot more. But they couldn't even tell me. They couldn't tell me who requested it even. Like,
I'd be fascinated to know, when was the last time it was used?
Exactly. I don't think I got that information, but had I got that information, it was probably 10 years ago on a lot. So just by going through that process, which I don't actually think is very difficult, you can eliminate a lot when you go to look at these customizations. And then when you bump it up against some things that were developed for their industry, right? Because they're using a generic Kanban application that wasn't built for the industry or whatever, or SAP or whatever, insert package. You see a bunch of other ones go away, and those are operational ones where, you had to do EDI, for automotive.
Sure.
Or you had to do, trading partners or something for automotive with your Honda, and you had to print labels and things like that. That was all customization of the base ERP software, right? So you can eliminate a whole bunch of those too while you're at it. And this is even just approaching blue. This is just kind of a process of crossing them off in a spreadsheet or deleting rows.
Right. I would imagine that what was only available to do via EDI 15 years ago now has some nice standardized APIs. Not in all cases, but in many cases where you could say, we can turn that EDI off completely and do some better direct connects with whatever more modern stack you want to do, whether it's, HTTP or, JSON dumps or all kinds of other options, which are less archaic than EDI and probably easier to support at this point also.
Yeah, and you could go either way. I mean, you can use iPaaS or some sort of solution like that, or you can even default to EDI if you have to, like in the case of automotive. Right. I mean, this guy's like GM and Ford and all, they still use EDI. There's tons of it there, right? So the trading partners might have a sort of standard EDI, whereas before you had to develop each one individually because it had a different format, right? It didn't follow the standard EDIFACT, whatever it was, right? So you have now these trading partners, which are already available.
And that actually reminds me of something that's a little bit related to customizations and all of these separate pieces. Is I was just recently reading about one of the difficulties that folks like GM, Ford are having as it relates to competing with Tesla, is that Tesla did all their software in-house.
Yes.
And then Ford and GM, you've got CAN bus running around the whole car, and all of their parts, the Bosch fuel pump, that software was written by Bosch. And so, the blinkers, the headlights, the transmission control, the ECU, all of those pieces, it's not Ford software. And I'm not saying that pejoratively. I'm not saying like, oh, this is bad. I'm just saying that is the ecosystem. And the estimate was there were 300 different software pieces inside one vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
And they were saying this is an obstacle to us, making progress and iterating because we don't have all that software in-house. We can't, make a change at a global scale and then push it down to all of our other pieces because those pieces are in separate repositories, separate pieces of software spread all over in different languages, all kinds of other stuff. And that same kind of problem can exist within an ERP or an MRP space where you have, your factory and you've got IoT, but that IoT was designed to only connect to maybe this industrial PLC. It doesn't speak this language. Those libraries are in Visual C++, and it has to be in, some other, Node, JavaScript now. And there's a lot of legacy pieces where when you're integrating so many parts that acts as a drag on your speed of innovation.
You're showing your technical chops, by the way.
I fight these things daily. So, I mean, internally, the battle that we have, with ALOX, because for we are designed for smaller players, and no one here is going to spend $50,000 on customization. That's not what they're doing. And so the battle we have internally is when feature requests come in, it's really like, are we going to develop that for the whole user base?
Right.
Or is this something that would be nice, but we should just say no to? Because there's of the 6,000 reports, how many of them maybe were even never used? Like they asked for them, they paid for them. And maybe we use sort number 1, sort number 2, sort number 3, and then sorts 4 and 5. It turns out we never even clicked on them once. So I think on that aspect, this is one thing that Google has. And like every other company that we talk about, you've got lovers and haters. But one of the things they do is they look at the features that they put out. And of course, they have metrics on all of them. And they say, if only 20% of the people use this, we're going to take it off.
Yep.
And so, because you can imagine many things could be in Gmail, all kinds of things could be in there. But if not everyone is going to use it, the larger benefit is that the product is simple enough for the people to use effectively,
Yep.
rather than having, super advanced, weirdo high-tech things. So I think that is a battle we all fight all the time. And the difference in the ERP space is that the people who get to decide whether that thing happens is just who's writing the check. And
Yep.
it's not necessarily I'm looking after all of my people or all of my whole customer base. It's what do I want? And there's usually a disconnect between the technical people at the top and the business people at the top. So it's a conflict. It's not a right or wrong. It's just, it's the sun and the moon battling for who's going to light up the earth. It's never ending.
Sounds like I'm sure you guys have some customer feedback in terms of functionality and things like that. I like the product though. I like it. I was looking on and I saw your little demo video. Like it.
Yeah.
And it's very specific in a good way. And I like I said before, I really appreciate that you have made it very easy for a customer coming on there. You don't try to tell them you're something you're not. You just you tell them if you're this kind of customer, if you're a manufacturer, go see Dan. Thanks for the plug, by the way.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today. Now back to the show.
In my mind, you can view business as a battle between entities, or you can view it as the best collaborations possible. And so there's a little bit of room for both, but I think that you will be more productive collaborating and getting more people what they need than you will be trying to take as much for yourself, even if it's the wrong stuff. So
yeah, absolutely.
I don't want the wrong customers at all. That would be
that's going to be a failure anyway.
Yeah.
Right? If you bring them in, what's the point? You might as well, segment them on the front end and rather than find out that you're doing something you shouldn't be doing on the back end.
I am sure, Dan, I'm sure in your decades of experience that, whether it's been like in the boardroom or in, the bar afterwards, at some point you've been like, I can't believe Bobby sold this guy on whatever solution. Like, everyone at the table knows it's not going to work, but Bobby, he did it. And someone wrote the check, and you just know it's going to be 18 months of grueling work ending in failure.
Back when I was a consultant, that happened every week.
Oh.
The pre-sales guys would show something, oh, that really doesn't exist. Oh, we decided we'd show it. It was, I'm like, how did you do that? And he's like, I got this little jerry rig spreadsheet behind the scenes that, and I click on it and it looks like it created it, or something. I'm like, no, you're killing us. Now we have to go implement this. So we have to be in front of the customer and tell them it doesn't do that, but yeah, you kind of hit on a real good thing is that you want to please your customers, right? At the end of the day, It's all about pleasing your customers. And I think that should be the case. And that's why, I have friends in SAP world. I have friends in many different worlds, because I believe in pleasing the customer. So it just so happens that I'm an Infor and now NetSuite guy as well.
Great products, sure.
And I want to explain, and I want to explain what they do and what they don't do, and hopefully some advantages over other approaches, like I mentioned, the vertical industry specialization for Infor, because I think that's a very important distinction. But at the end of the day, many software packages could do the job, and I realize that. And so what I want to do is find the best fit, and I want to create a lot of education out there in the market. And I've got some initiatives coming up, like a video library that's going to be part education, part demo, and things like that about various different products, but also about business process things, about project management. Like that blog that I mentioned was really going through all the steps in a project and recommending what the ERP doctor would recommend at each stage. But it was going through the project plan, essentially the phases of a project as we see it at PCG, and then explaining what we would recommend about each stage of the project. So it's a general thing. I mean, it could be used for a different software package. But I see Ryan's coming back on, so I think we've been talking. It's just gone so fast.
Before Ryan jumps in, I want to add to what Dan said, is that when you say at the end of the day, there are multiple packages that could work for a particular group, and yes, we're trying to help you select with that. But I think another key piece of that is that you may have choice A or choice B. The people that are behind that also are pretty important. The people that you end up working with are important, because if you have A and B and they're identical, but A has a team that is like available and ready to work with you, and B has, totally overloaded with more customers than they can handle, and they don't have this supportability, then it turns out that it's not just the technical checklist, but who are the people that you're working with becomes
absolutely
a critical
probably
piece
more
of that
important
success.
than the software. Yes, probably more important than the software, in my opinion.
That's something that I've been hearing across industries on all the shows that we produce, especially in the face of AI, where people are saying, yes, AI, it's a great tool. You can do a lot of things with it. At the end of the day, it is the people who are implementing it. It's the people who you're working with. And this, I'm beginning to think at this point that that's not just hope, empty hope, that it's an actual thing, and that it's something you definitely need to consider when making any kind of decision in terms of software, and especially with ERP. Dan, I jumped in because I was curious. Where can we find some of this stuff? Can we get updates on the things that you're working on?
I can give you updates. I haven't debuted it yet.
Oh, okay.
I've got a list of videos that we're going to produce and some educational videos that already exist, and we're bringing them into this tool called Vidyard, and we're going to create a really nice addition to the website, which is going to be a big room. They call it a room, and we're going to put all kinds of things like presentation materials, documentation, and things like that.
Will there be teasers? Are there teasers coming?
Oh yeah, teasers are coming.
Promos
on the PCG YouTube channel. We'll have teasers as we roll them out.
Excellent. All right, yeah, I'll put in a link to that down in the show notes, maybe even on the video. And where can people? How about for you yourself, Dan? Where's the best place for people to look for you?
So I am at pcgservices.com, and my email is daldridge, DALDRIDGE @PCGservices. And as you guys know, I can be found on LinkedIn. That's where I meet a lot of people. And also PCG has a YouTube channel and a LinkedIn page that you can find us on.
All right. And all that information will be down in the show notes, except for your email address. I'm not going to put that in the show notes. So that it gets scraped by bots and you get a bunch of spam. But
okay, take that. Forget I said that.
LinkedIn should be able to find you.
Yeah, LinkedIn's
find
fine.
you that way. Anders, how about you? Where can people find out more about you, what you're working on?
Well, if they want to find me, then LinkedIn is the easiest spot there. So Anders Green at LinkedIn, and that's ANDERS, even though it sounds like ONDERS. So that's if you want to social me up, that's the spot. And then our website is ALOX4.online. So very simple there. So, and I'm sure it'll be in the show notes.
It will be. It will be. Yeah. Take a look below wherever you're watching, listening. We'll have all that information there. You can also come and join us at InsideJam.com. I know Dan's on there as one of our experts. If you want to get involved with other ERP fans and experts, continue the conversation. We keep a running log of all of our shows there. The only social network that I know of that's dedicated solely to enterprise technology. So check that out, InsideJam.com. And also make sure, I'll say it again, make sure to subscribe to the show down below. We'll have another one in 2 weeks. I've got a hot tip that it will be another Down Under episode. We got Judith O'Callahan and Ashley Saltzman will be on that show. And Dan, like I was teasing you earlier, we're gonna have a cross-continental crossover episode.
All right.
When we can find a time that works.
So do we have some more legitimate Australians coming? Is that the scoop?
That is the scoop. They're coming in.
Awesome.
They're coming in.
I am a citizen of Australia.
Okay.
As well as America and Sweden.
Ooh, okay.
You are a Renaissance man.
Trans-global.
Yes, Northern, Eastern, and Southern hemispheres. Well, and Western. Wow. Okay, that's all of them. You did it. Full glow. All right. So, and if you're an expert who wants to get involved with the show, please let us know down in the comments or on InsideJam.com. Or if you have a question for our experts, reach out to them on LinkedIn or drop it here on the comments, and we can get in touch. I'm sure we'll have both of you back on the show again soon. It was great to listen to you two. Join us again in 2 weeks' time. And if you're finding yourself really bored in those intervening 2 weeks, check out the rest of the shows we have on the channel here at Inside Jam. Lots of information, lots of entertaining, trenchant, insightful comedy. It's there in the name. But until then, for Dan Aldridge and Anders Green, I'm Ryan Daly. We'll see you again soon.